The Arabian horse breed has been around for thousands of years, living among the desert tribes of the Arabian Peninsula. Through the ages, the Arabian horse has become domesticated and formed a bond with man that to this day is still a sought-after treasure. Keeping this breed going are countless men and women who have dedicated their lives to continuing the Arabian horse heritage through breeding. Every year, phenomenal Arabian horses are produced by the breeding industry. Many of the horses go on to have successful showing and breeding careers because of their great start in life from their breeders. One of the main reasons we are able to trace back the heritage of the Arabian horse and to track their successes is because of registration. We sat down with prominent breeders in the industry, and this is what they had to say about registration and the need for it.
For me, part of the allure of the Arabian horse is its history, and knowing that people have been breeding purebred Arabians for thousands of years, and pedigree is important. It's something that most other breeds of horses, even if they have pedigrees, they can't trace back to the desert. And Arabians are able to do that. They're able to trace back hundreds of years.
The reason it's important is it gives you what they're from and who they're from, and it's kind of a history of the horse coming into play here.
I think, well, one of the intriguing things for me, and I think for many others, is that because of the registration process, you can actually go back and see your horse's lineage that goes back hundreds of years. And I think that when you factor in the other countries that have had breeding programs, and it's just really interesting that this horse is a purebred Arabian.
A registration certificate allows you to document and to record the background. It's no different when somebody says you look just like your grandmother, you know? And maybe it's good if you act like your grandmother, and maybe it's good if you don't act like your grandmother. But those things are all inherited traits. Your eye color, your skin color, personality traits, those types of things. Those are all inherited by our horses, and by documenting those things, that adds value to what you're doing.
To me, I mean, the history of the Arabian horse is so significant, and it goes back so many years, that I feel it's to document and honor these horses, and so they're not forgotten, that there is a history, that these mares that have produced, numerous babies, that it's part of the mare's history and honors the mare and everything that she's done as well.
I don't understand the question.
Exactly. I mean, registry is like, so necessary. There's no other choice than the registered horse. I mean, that first of all is a guarantee of the purity of the horse, right? If we want to breed Arabians, let's make sure that they're purebred Arabians. If there is any doubt, well, they're not registered. So if you don't care that it's a purebred Arabian, well, go someplace else. But if you want to deal with the purebreds, make sure there's a purebred, make sure that you know about the past and the pedigree and everything, because you can learn from it. You can be smarter in the future decisions because you know the past.
You also have the paper that shows their lineage, shows when they were born, the date they were born. It has so much information on that one slip of paper that when we sell a horse and it transfers to a new owner, they have something tangible, and they can look at the lineage there. They can they know when that horse was, who bred the horse, and and they want to be the owner. They have a certificate, half Arabian or purebred. They have a certificate that shows that's my horse.
Horses have a way of getting lost in the system. There are many horses bred, and sometimes you lose track of where your horses go. They get sold and sold on again. And a registration certificate is a way of being able to identify that horse throughout its lifetime with with its name, with its family, with its pedigree, with its breeder, with its past owners. And all of that information I find is very important to be able to have access to.
Registration matters, and I'm a firm believer in registration of purebred livestock, whatever that is, regardless of species, regardless of breed, because what we're doing is we're ensuring the preservation of the best genetics in every generation have the ability to go forward to the next generation. Unregistered horses, unregistered livestock in general gets lost, and the qualities that make those horses and that livestock special get lost going forward if we're not accountable to say, yes, we know for sure that this is the sire of colt X and the dam of filly Y, to be able to say this is what we understand going forward. So registration to me is essential in any sport. We deal with this in Australia a lot in terms of trying to get endurance horses at the top level, a sport in which Arabians excel and unfortunately have, and to the rest of the equines around the world, have the unfair advantage of competing in endurance on a daily basis for 5,000 years, as we know. But a lot of endurance horses are not being registered, and the genetics which make those endurance horses special is being lost for the next generation as those horses go overseas and the registration information doesn't go with them. So we don't know what were the genetics that made those horses succeed, and how do we capture those genetics to create superior athletes in the next generation. So to me, registering your horse is fundamental to ensuring that horse not only has the most positive outcome in life that it can, but ensuring that we create the most positive outcome for the breed for the next generation and the generations to follow.
There's a great story I think that illustrates this, is that in 1939, when the Russian army came into Janov Podlaski, so they confiscated all the Polish horses. They were taking these horses from the Poles, and this wasn't the Poles didn't give them the horses. They were physically taking them, and they were going to do on a long march, and they were going to take them back to Terstad, to the Soviet Union. But the Poles gave them all the pedigrees of who these horses were, because they didn't want these horses to be lost. They didn't want them to not know their heritage, their ancestor, and that they would be lost to the breed. So they wanted them to know who these horses were. And it was I can only imagine how heartbreaking it was for the Poles to be losing these horses, but they were making sure that they still had a connection. I actually was in the office having tea with the director of Janov Podlaski, and this was a couple years ago, and he was telling us a story about Isabella Zavadka, who passed away recently, and he was telling her that he was telling us that in the 1980s he visited the Soviet Union, and she actually was in the office and she saw the old Polish stud books that were given to the Soviets when they took the horses in 1939. And she, and Director Trellis says, this epitomizes Isabella, because she grabbed those books and she said, these are our books. These books now belong to us. And it just tells you that, how important it is to know who these horses are and their heritage and where they come from. I mean, I can't speak about a horse, when someone says they have an Arabian, my first sense is like, what do you have? And once you get past, sex, color, it's like, who's the sire and dam? I mean, tell me something, because to me the pedigree tells a story about how the horses look, about, where they come from, I mean, what their history is, and, it's just a vital part of the breed.
Well, I think you have to have a governing body that controls technology. It's sort of like some of the sport horse breeds don't have strong registries, so you could take a dose of semen and split it into several different breedings, and the stallion owner doesn't have much protection against how many mares that person's going to breed, because there's no registration. So I think registration is sort of the governing board that controls the abuse of technology, which there's always going to be someone who pushes the limits, The
people that take that position, in my opinion, are not true breeders. Breeders want record of what they've done. You want background. You want, if you're trying to find your ancestry, you have to have background information. Well, I'd like to have, if I'm not in this business 10 years from now, I'd like for somebody to say, well, you know what? Manny Vieira in Valley Oak brought over Immigrant. His daughters are producing phenomenal babies.
First of all, I think that everybody that breeds has a duty or a responsibility. If they're going to bring something in this world, that they need to give it every chance for success. And you just don't breed to like puppy mills. You breed to have horses that are going to have a life and a useful life. And so by registering them, it opens the opportunity for showing and also future breeding. I'm involved with a sport with endurance that doesn't require registration, but I do register on my own and encourage other people, because I think over the next few decades, endurance racing is going to be grow and grow more than some of our other equine sports. And when we can start to use pedigrees and registrations and what the registrar has to offer in the form of bloodlines and stuff to select for superior animals that can be competitive in endurance riding, I think that's just to keep track of them, and just like the thoroughbreds have done for probably a century, is to establish bloodlines that are better than others, and that I don't think anybody can do better than the registry.
There's lots of reasons why it's important. The Arabian horse has such fantastic heritage, and the fact that it's the only true breed of horse, that all other horses were derived from the Arabian horse, that in itself is reason enough to register your horse. It also keeps that heritage alive. It passes it on to the next generation, not only of horse, but the next generation of breeder. There's so many cool things about having registered stock of any kind, but with the Arabian heritage and how far back it's traced, it's a necessity. There's the obvious things for marketing and showing, but it goes way beyond that for me anyway, to the heritage. And when you go way back and you'll see DSB, desert bred, that's just a really, really cool thing.
Well, I sat on the registry board for a long, long time. And it always irritates me when people do not register their foals. It would be like my husband and I having children, but we're not going to give them a birth certificate.
Well, if a horse isn't registered, it goes into a completely different marketplace. It really needs to be imprinted as an Arabian horse. Here we're doing this. We're so thrilled to be involved with this breed of horses because it's ancient. It's the foundation for so many other breeds we wouldn't have in this world today.
Well, I think it's important just to keep the purity of the breed, and I use it actually quite a bit, especially thinking about the mares that we're wanting to breed. I'll go on data source, and if I see a stallion here, maybe at Scottsdale or at a national show or just anywhere, and I can get on data source and I can go back and I can look at his lineage. And then I know what our horses are. And we've gone kind of more Polish, and there's certain bloodlines that I seem to kind of prefer in my performance horses. So I can look and go in and read about it and decide if it's possibly on paper going to be a good cross for me.
Why would you not register your horse? It gives it value. It gives it history. It gives it legitimacy.
So I think that, like I said, somebody created that horse. Somebody made the decision to have a baby, and it is their responsibility to see that his heritage goes with him or her to increase, not only to maintain his value, but to maintain his care or her care.
You need to have a database that you go to review, evaluate, and analyze. You have to register your horses.
Yeah, absolutely.
No choice.
Just don't trust.
So to me, it's invaluable as far as the quality of the Arabian horse. And if you're an accountant or engineer type, there's stats there. And that's not the only way to breed, but it does give you a pretty good indication. And I think it's very, very important.
A pedigree isn't just a list of horses' names. Oh, this horse is famous. This one, this mare is a good mare. It's it's a list of characteristics for the animal. Each horse isn't just a name on the pedigree. It's a list of characteristics that horse had. You understand whether, okay, this stallion, his name is your horse's grandsire. Well, you know that particular stallion, okay, he had an excellent shoulder, he had a very long neck, he had a beautiful arched neck, he had a fine head, his body wasn't so good and he was a little short in the croup. But the name isn't as important as the characteristics that go with that name. And all of that's reflected in a registration certificate and in the information that you can find by reading and talking to breeders and talking to owners about what the older horses look like. And so the registration certificate gives you that initial basis to then go on and research what your horse is and why your horse looks like he does. I think that's the most important thing.
So in this way, I think it is important to do register your horse, to do have a passport. And, you know, if you just keep your horse at home and you don't feel like it represents the breed in the right way, and you don't feel like you're never gonna breed with it on, and you're never going to compete with it in a professional way, I might have a small sympathy for that. Although, a horse has a lifespan of 20 years. And many people, they don't make it during that time. Because suddenly they have kids and they need to sell their horse. Or suddenly they have something else happening in their life and they need to sell their horse. Or, you know, anything can happen. And then that horse stands there without any form of identification, without any form of passport or something. Make it as a responsibility for yourself that you bring this in order. Whenever something happens with you, that your horse still has a home, that it still has a place to be, you know, that it can be followed, that it can be checked, and that it's not there alone on the world. Who knows ending up where? That's why I believe in the passport, I believe in the registration, and I believe in shipping a horse.
Just like registering your foals is important, transferring your horses when you sell them is important, and encouraging the people to transfer them, because an Arabian is, you know, a horse with a very long life typically, and many Arabians go through multiple careers. If it's just being someone's pet, to some child riding it, to someone trail riding it, and maybe if it's a mare they breed it once or twice just for fun or seriously or whatever, and you know, once you have that registration, once that horse is transferred, it opens up all the possibilities of the items you can do with that horse.